Picture this. You're standing alone in the engine room of a massive World War II aircraft carrier at 3 a.m. The air is thick with the metallic scent of old machinery and decades of maritime history. Suddenly, a friendly young sailor in vintage uniform approaches you, offering to explain how the ship's turbines work. He's incredibly knowledgeable, charming, with piercing blue eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of someone who truly understood his craft. But here's the terrifying twist. No tour guides work in the engine room, and that uniform hasn't been used by the Navy in decades. You've just met Charlie, the most famous ghost aboard the USS Lexington, known as the Blue Ghost. Today, we're diving deep into one of America's most haunted locations. Not a creepy mansion or abandoned asylum, but a floating museum in Corpus Christi, Texas. This is the story of how a legendary warship that cheated death multiple times in World War II became home to hundreds of restless spirits who refused to abandon their posts. The USS Lexington CV-16 isn't just any haunted location. It's a massive Essex-class aircraft carrier that served with distinction in 21 of 24 major Pacific battles during World War II. What makes this story so compelling isn't just the ghost sightings, but the tragic history that created them. Nearly 400 sailors lost their lives while serving aboard this mighty vessel, many in sudden, violent circumstances that paranormal experts believe can trap spirits in the physical world. From kamikaze attacks that killed dozens in the engine room to torpedo strikes that claimed multiple lives, the Lexington has witnessed unimaginable trauma and heroism. In this comprehensive exploration, we'll uncover the ship's wartime legacy, examine the most compelling ghost encounters reported by visitors and staff, analyze the paranormal hotspots throughout the vessel, and reveal why professional ghost hunters consider the Lexington one of the most actively haunted locations in America. The birth of a legend. Originally intended to be named USS Cabot, this ship received the name Lexington after the original USS Lexington CV-2 was lost at the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942. The new Lexington was commissioned in February 1943 and immediately thrust into the brutal Pacific theater of World War II. The timing couldn't have been more crucial. America needed every carrier it could get as the Pacific War intensified, and the Lexington would prove to be exactly the kind of formidable weapon the Navy desperately required. Why the Blue Ghost? The nickname Blue Ghost originated from Japanese propaganda, specifically from Tokyo Rose broadcasts. Japanese radio repeatedly announced they had sunk the Lexington. Not once, not twice, but 4 separate times throughout the war. Each time, the ship returned to battle, painted in distinctive blue-gray camouflage that made her appear ghostly as she emerged from Pacific mists to strike Japanese targets. This wasn't just propaganda warfare, it was psychological warfare at its finest. The Japanese genuinely believed they had destroyed this particular carrier multiple times, yet it kept appearing in battle reports like a supernatural entity that refused to stay dead, a ship that wouldn't die. The Lexington participated in crucial operations including raids on Tarawa, Wake Island, the Marshall Islands, the Battle of the Philippine Sea, and Leyte Gulf. On December 4, 1943, during a raid on Kwajalein, she was struck by a torpedo that knocked out her steering gear and killed 9 crew members, 7 in the chief petty officer's mess room, and 2 on the fantail. The ship settled 5 feet by the stern, but survived, earning her first death announcement from Tokyo Rose. But the most devastating attack was yet to come. The Lexington would face her greatest test when Japanese kamikaze pilots specifically targeted her, leading to the kind of carnage that many believe created the spiritual activity that persists to this day. The kamikaze horror. The most devastating attack occurred on November 5, 1944, when a Japanese kamikaze aircraft carrying a 500-pound bomb crashed directly into the starboard aft end of the island. The explosion and resulting fires killed dozens of men. Some died instantly from the impact, while others burned to death in the inferno that followed. This single incident created what many believe to be the most concentrated paranormal activity on the ship. The kamikaze pilot's final moment of destruction created a permanent scar on the vessel, not just physically, but spiritually. The memorial ceremony held in 2024, commemorating the 80th anniversary of this attack, reminded visitors that real people died horrible deaths in these spaces, and according to many witnesses, some never left. The helpful engine room guide. Charlie is undoubtedly the Lexington's most well-documented spirit. Described as a handsome young sailor with piercing blue eyes, Charlie appears wearing a vintage white Navy uniform that hasn't been used by the ship's staff in decades. Visitors consistently report encountering him in or near the engine room, where he provides incredibly detailed tours about how the ship's turbines and machinery operate. What sets Charlie apart from typical ghost encounters is his helpfulness. He doesn't appear to frighten or intimidate. Instead, he seems genuinely enthusiastic about sharing his knowledge of the ship's engineering systems with curious visitors. Eyewitness testimonies. Multiple visitors have approached museum staff to thank them for the exceptional tour given by that knowledgeable young man in the engine room. They describe Charlie as friendly, professional, and possessing intimate knowledge of the ship's engineering systems that even impresses maritime experts. The problem? The museum has never stationed any tour guides in the engine room, and certainly none wearing historical uniforms. These encounters follow a remarkably consistent pattern. Visitors describe the same physical appearance: handsome, blue-eyed, wearing period-appropriate navy whites. They report the same helpful demeanor and the same impressive technical knowledge. When multiple unconnected witnesses provide identical details, it suggests something beyond mere imagination. Charlie's tragic origin. While not definitively confirmed, many paranormal researchers believe Charlie was one of the engine room personnel killed during the 1944 kamikaze attack. His apparent dedication to continuing his duties, educating visitors about the ship's operations, aligns with the behavior of spirits who died suddenly while performing important work. Recent paranormal investigations in 2024 and 2025 continue to document Charlie's appearances, with some investigators capturing electronic voice phenomena that seem to correlate with engine room encounters. Physical manifestations. Unlike many ghosts who appear as transparent figures or shadows, Charlie manifests as a solid, three-dimensional person that visitors often mistake for a living museum employee. He engages in full conversations, answers technical questions about the ship, and only disappears when visitors turn away or when the tour concludes. This level of physical manifestation is unusual in paranormal research and contributes to why the Lexington is considered such an active haunted location. The engine room, ground zero for activity. Beyond Charlie's appearances, the engine room experiences intense paranormal activity. Visitors frequently report hearing agonized screams echoing from the walls, sounds that many believe are psychic imprints from the men who burned to death during the kamikaze attack. The screams are so realistic and disturbing that even skeptical visitors become shaken after experiencing them. Professional paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained temperature drops, electromagnetic field fluctuations, and audio phenomena in this area that correlate with historical accounts of the kamikaze attack's aftermath. The switch room, closed to the public. This compartment, where a Japanese bomb explosion caused numerous deaths and horrific injuries, had to be permanently closed to visitors. The room's negative energy was so overwhelming that guests consistently reported feeling violently ill, experiencing overwhelming sadness, and sometimes collapsing entirely. Even the professional ghost hunters team, led by Jason Hawes and Grant Wilson, declared this area had some of the most intense paranormal activity they'd ever encountered. The fact that a television crew known for their skeptical approach to paranormal investigation found this area so disturbing speaks volumes about the genuine intensity of whatever phenomena occurs there. Hangar Bay. The Shadow People security officers routinely report hearing running footsteps throughout Hangar Bay during overnight hours when the ship is completely empty. The sounds are so distinct and persistent that guards regularly check security cameras and patrol the area. One security officer reported witnessing shadow figures running in chaos, an experience so terrifying that he immediately resigned and never returned to work. Paranormal investigators believe these shadow figures are spirits of sailors running for cover during torpedo and bomb attacks, particularly recreating the panic that occurred when the ship was hit in late 1943. Bill Miller, the ship's expert paranormal guide, suggests these spirits are reliving their final moments, eternally responding to battle stations' alerts that no longer sound. The Chief Petty Officer's domain. One recurring apparition appears as a chief petty officer, identifiable by his uniform rank insignia. Unlike the helpful Charlie, this spirit is notably unfriendly, scowling at the living and mumbling unintelligibly in a gravelly voice. Ship records document a chief petty officer who accidentally backed into a spinning airplane propeller, resulting in a gruesome death. Paranormal experts theorize this spirit remains angry at himself for the careless mistake that cost him his life. The Galley, Phantom Kitchen Crew. The ship's former kitchen area experiences ongoing auditory phenomena, including the sounds of pots and pans clanging, cooking activities, and the distinct aroma of food preparation. Staff and visitors report smelling bacon, coffee, and other foods as if the Phantom Kitchen Crew continues preparing meals for their shipmates. These sensory experiences suggest that some spirits maintain their wartime routines, continuing to perform the daily tasks they carried out when alive. Charlie the Guide. Separate from Engine Room Charlie, another spirit known as Charlie appears throughout the ship's maze-like corridors. This spirit manifests as a friendly young man in navy dungarees who assists lost visitors by guiding them through the confusing passageways back to the hangar bay. The USS Lexington is genuinely confusing to navigate. It's a massive vessel with identical-looking corridors and compartments that can easily disorient visitors. The fact that a helpful spirit assists confused guests suggests a benevolent presence that continues to care for the ship's visitors. The rescue protocol. Charlie's appearances follow a consistent pattern. Visitors become disoriented in the ship's complex interior layout, then encounter a helpful sailor who leads them through corridors and up stairways. At the final door to the hangar bay, Charlie tells them to just step through here and you'll be safe. When visitors turn to thank him after passing through the doorway, he has completely vanished. Multiple confirmed encounters. This phenomenon has been reported by numerous visitor groups over the years, with remarkably consistent details about Charlie's appearance, behavior, and the specific phrase he uses. The fact that multiple unconnected witnesses report identical experiences lends credibility to these accounts and suggests genuine paranormal activity rather than misidentification or imagination. The Sci-Fi Channel's Ghost Hunters team, featuring Jason Hawes and Grant Wilson of the Atlantic Paranormal Society, conducted an extensive investigation of the Lexington in 2007. Their findings were so significant that they declared the ship one of the most haunted locations they had ever investigated. This endorsement from experienced paranormal investigators who approach cases with scientific methodology adds considerable credibility to the Lexington's reputation as a genuinely haunted location. During their investigation, the team captured compelling electronic voice phenomena recordings, including what appeared to be a voice saying, "I'm burning inside the Lexington," directly correlating to the historical kamikaze attack that killed multiple men. Team member Donna Lacroix became physically ill in the switch room, experiencing the same overwhelming negative sensations that forced the museum to close that area to public tours. The correlation between documented EVP recordings and historical events provides some of the strongest evidence for genuine paranormal activity aboard the vessel. The museum regularly hosts overnight paranormal investigations led by expert guides like Bill Miller. These events, continuing into 2025, provide participants with professional ghost hunting equipment and guided tours to the 6 primary paranormal hotspots aboard the ship. Recent investigations continue to document unexplained phenomena, including cabinet doors opening spontaneously, unexplained light anomalies, mysterious tapping sounds, and electronic equipment malfunctions in specific areas of the ship. Modern paranormal investigations using updated equipment continue to yield compelling results. Digital recorders capture unexplained voices, electromagnetic field detectors register anomalous readings, and thermal imaging cameras document temperature fluctuations that correlate with reported supernatural encounters. The consistency of results across different investigation teams using various technological approaches suggests genuine unexplained phenomena rather than equipment malfunction or investigator bias. Traumatic imprint theory. Paranormal researchers propose that the Lexington's hauntings result from traumatic imprints, psychic energy recordings left behind by sudden violent deaths. The theory suggests that intense emotional trauma can literally imprint itself onto physical locations, particularly metal structures like ships that conduct electromagnetic energy. This theory gains credibility when considering the Lexington's history of sudden, violent deaths occurring in confined spaces, where men experienced extreme terror and pain in their final moments. Why ships are different. Maritime vessels present unique conditions for paranormal activity. The metal construction creates an electromagnetic environment that some researchers believe can store and replay psychic impressions. Additionally, ships become intensely emotional spaces, serving as home, workplace, and final resting place for crew members who develop profound spiritual connections to their vessels. Sailors often refer to their ships with feminine pronouns and develop emotional bonds that transcend typical workplace relationships. This emotional investment may contribute to spirits' reluctance to abandon their vessel, even after death. The residual versus intelligent haunting debate. The Lexington exhibits both residual hauntings, repetitive actions like the shadow figures running in panic, and intelligent hauntings, interactive spirits like Charlie who respond to questions and provide information. This combination suggests multiple types of spiritual phenomena occurring simultaneously aboard the ship. Residual hauntings are typically considered psychic recordings that replay without conscious interaction, while intelligent hauntings involve spirits that can communicate and respond to the living. The presence of both types on the Lexington makes it a particularly rich location for paranormal research. Historical validation. What makes the Lexington's hauntings particularly compelling is how closely they align with documented historical events. The engine room screams correlate precisely with the 1944 kamikaze attack location. The running shadow figures match historical accounts of battle stations' alerts, and the chief petty officer's anger aligns with documented accidental death records. This historical correlation distinguishes genuine paranormal locations from places where ghost stories develop without factual foundation. Debunking versus belief. Critical analysis. The skeptical perspective. Critics argue that the Lexington's reported hauntings can be explained through natural phenomena, metal expansion creating sounds, electromagnetic fields from the ship's electrical systems causing hallucinations, and psychological suggestion influenced by the ship's tragic history. They point out that people visiting a location known for ghost stories may be predisposed to interpret normal sounds and experiences as supernatural. The museum's own director, Steve Banta, acknowledges skepticism while admitting, "There are too many accounts that there has to be something to it." Multiple long-term museum employees, including Operations Director Charles "Rusty" Russell with 26 years of service, report personal paranormal experiences despite initial skepticism. Russell's story about mysteriously disappearing and reappearing pen caps demonstrates how even practical, skeptical individuals can encounter unexplainable phenomena. The fact that employees who work on the ship daily report ongoing unexplained experiences suggests something beyond tourist imagination or suggestion. The pattern evidence. What distinguishes the Lexington from typical ghost story locations is the consistency of reported experiences across decades and thousands of independent witnesses. The specific details about Charlie's appearance, Charlie's guidance protocol, and the engine room screams remain remarkably consistent despite being reported by unconnected individuals. This consistency across time and diverse witness groups provides compelling evidence that something genuine occurs aboard the vessel. Professional validation. The fact that experienced paranormal investigators like the Atlantic Paranormal Society rated the Lexington among their most compelling cases adds credibility to the claims. These professionals approach investigations with scientific methodology and skeptical analysis, making their positive conclusions particularly significant. Professional validation from multiple independent investigation teams suggests genuine paranormal activity rather than mass hysteria or suggestion. Conclusion. The eternal crew. The USS Lexington represents something profound about human connection to place and purpose. Whether you believe in ghosts or view these phenomena through psychological and scientific lenses, the stories aboard the Blue Ghost speak to the deep bonds formed between sailors and their ship during wartime. Bill Miller, the ship's paranormal tour guide, perhaps said it best. They're constantly doing the same thing over and over again, maintaining the ship, This was their home, and they don't want to go anywhere else. These spirits, if they exist, aren't malevolent entities seeking to frighten visitors. They're dedicated sailors, continuing their duty to preserve and protect the vessel they loved. The Living Memorial. As 2025 marks continued recognition of World War II veterans and their service, the Lexington stands as more than just a museum. It's a living memorial where the past refuses to be forgotten. Recent events like the 80th anniversary commemorations of major battles and the continued overnight paranormal investigations demonstrate ongoing interest in preserving these stories. The helicopter landing ceremony in July 2025, transferring a TH-57C Sea Ranger to the museum, represents the continuing evolution of the Lexington as a repository of naval aviation history. Each new artifact and exhibit joins the existing collection in a space where history feels genuinely alive. The continuing mystery. The Lexington's hauntings remind us that some connections transcend death itself. For the nearly 400 men who gave their lives serving aboard this ship, their watch may never truly end. Whether you visit as a history enthusiast, paranormal investigator, or curious skeptic, the USS Lexington offers a unique opportunity to walk in the footsteps of heroes, both living and perhaps eternal. As you explore the Blue Ghost's decks and compartments, remember you're not just touring a museum. You're entering a space where ordinary men performed extraordinary service, where some made the ultimate sacrifice, and where their legacy continues through stories that bridge the gap between history and mystery. The ongoing paranormal investigations scheduled throughout 2025, led by expert guides like Bill Miller, continue to document unexplained phenomena while honoring the memory of those who served. Each investigation brings new evidence while maintaining respect for the sailors whose stories continue to unfold decades after their deaths. What will you experience aboard the Lexington? That's a question only a visit can answer. But one thing remains certain: the Blue Ghost continues to capture imaginations and challenge our understanding of life, death, and the bonds that tie us to the places we love. If this deep dive into the USS Lexington's haunted history fascinated you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more explorations into history's most intriguing mysteries. Have you ever experienced something unexplainable in a historical location? Share your story in the comments below. Our community loves hearing about your encounters with the unknown. And if you're planning a trip to Corpus Christi, Texas, consider booking one of the Lexington's overnight paranormal investigations to experience these phenomena firsthand. The museum continues hosting these special events throughout 2025, offering brave visitors the chance to walk the decks after dark and perhaps meet Charlie or Charlie for themselves. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep an open mind to the mysteries that surround us. The spirits aboard the Blue Ghost remind us that history isn't just something we read about. Sometimes it's something that reaches across decades to share its stories with those willing to listen. Before you disappear into the shadows, remember, this channel is your gateway to the world's most chilling mysteries, unsolved crimes, and history's greatest enigmas. Every like, comment, subscription brings you deeper into our community of fellow seekers, where your theories and stories become part of the investigation. Which legend, conspiracy, or haunting should we unravel next? Drop your requests in the comments, and you might just see your mystery featured in an upcoming episode. The unknown is vast, and together we'll keep peeling back the layers, one story at a time. Don't forget to subscribe, because the next twist in the tale is just around the corner. Stay curious, stay bold, and as always, keep your eyes open for what lurks just beyond the veil.